What are fractions? There's a word in our language which we use a bit more frequently than fraction, even though we use that a fair bit. If you have a bone and it gets broken into pieces and put in a cast, you say you've got a fracture. A fracture, right? When something is fractured, it means it's broken into pieces, right? Or divided into pieces, if you like. And so that's what fractions are about. It's like taking whole numbers. We've dealt with whole numbers before, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But thinking about, well, what if you break them into pieces that are smaller than just the wholes, okay? If you have, rather than saying, okay, I've got 2 whiteboard markers, they're whole numbers. If you had part of a whiteboard marker, what would that, how do we do the maths with that, okay? So, as we know, and just to review it, there are 3 kinds of fractions that we work with, right? 3 kinds of fractions. Anyone want to put up their hand? What's the first sort of normal kind of fraction to know? Proper fractions. Very good. Proper fractions. So, most of what you think of when you think of fractions, we'll get to the other 2 in a second, and I'll ask both of you. Most of what we think of are proper fractions, right? So, for example, a half is a proper fraction, right? Or 4/5. Or 99 out of 100. What makes a proper fraction proper? What is it about it? Yeah, Nathan.
I don't know which one's which, but
the
top number's smaller than the bottom.
Okay, good. So we got the top and the bottom number. Can someone help me out? What are they called? Nipun, what's the bottom one?
Denominator.
Denominator, very good. And that makes the top one, someone else? What's it called? Yeah, the numerator. I heard it, very good. The numerator. So if the numerator is smaller than the denominator, right? That means that you're going to have a proper fraction, okay? The denominator is, how many times do you want to fracture it? How many times do you want to break it up? 9 out of 100 would be, I've broken it into 100 tiny pieces. That's the denominator. And then the numerator is, well, how many of those pieces do you want? Okay? So 4/5, you'd break it into 5 pieces. That's your denominator. And then you take 4 of them. That's numerator. Okay? If the numerator is smaller than the denominator, you get a proper fraction. But if it's not, what happens? Yeah, Danielle.
Improper.
Very good. Improper fractions. Improper fractions. So this is just kind of in reverse, right? It's if you have the numerator bigger, the other way around, right? So for example, you could have 3/2. Or you could have, let's do 7/4. Or if you do 100/99. So here, all of the numerators are bigger than all of the denominators. They're all improper. Why are these proper and these improper? Why would we make,
Because the denominator is on top, is where the numerator is meant to be.
Yeah, kinda. Like there's a bit of a swap thing happening. What were you going to say, Manal?
The number on the top is bigger than the number on the bottom.
Good. If this is bigger than this, it's improper. I guess you'd think about it in terms of, like when you fracture something, it's like you start with a whole, you start with 1, and then you break it into pieces. So what you'll get is less than 1, right? But all of these guys are more than 1, aren't they? They're all bigger than 1. 2/2 would be 1, and this is 3 of them. 4/4 would be 1, and this is 7 of them, and so on. Okay. So since all of these are actually more than 1, we have another way to write improper fractions. It's the last kind, yeah.
Mixed fractions.
Yeah, mixed numerals is usually what we call them, but you get the idea. They're mixed because we put together a fraction with a whole number, okay? So in fact, I'm going to write these 3 here. So 3/2 would be 1.5. Okay, 1.5. 7/4 would be 1 3/4. That's the way I read it as well. Not 1/2, it's 1.5. Not 1 3/4, it's 1 3/4. And then this guy here would be 1 1/99th, I guess. Okay? And it doesn't have to be a 1 out the front. It could be a 2 or a 3 or a 4. Whatever whole numbers you like to include. Okay? So those are the kinds of fractions. Now, want to get our head back in the space in terms of adding and subtracting these guys. Adding and subtracting. And there is one key idea. There's one key idea that kind of catches all the different adding and subtracting of fractions that we're going to get, which is, you can put this right at the top. Yeah, do you want to say?
Keeping the denominators.
Good. Make the denominator, or the denominators, identical. And if you do that, then you can put together any fractions you like, whether they're proper or improper, or even if they're mixed numerals.